Perfect timing. I'll go ahead and kick us off. I'll introduce myself. And then after we'll do our team little introductions. Maybe we'll do everyone introductions. There aren't many folks on the call. And then I'll have Rocio kind of hold up the agenda and walk us through the agenda after that. We'll do a little exercise to plan for future meetings, and then we'll have Mark and his team, or himself, walk through our quarterly enforcement report. So hi, I'm Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies with the Air District. My team oversees and sort of convenes all of the different Air District and other agency pieces of the 617 or Community Steering Committee process here in Stockton and across all of the other communities like it in the Valley. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Rocio to introduce herself.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. My name is Rocio Calderon. I'm an air quality specialist in the Community Strategies and Resources Department, and I am the community liaison for the Stockton AB 617 community. So super excited to be here and kick off the regulatory and enforcement subcommittees again. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Mark.
Thanks, Rocio. Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Rasmussen. I am the compliance manager in the Modesto office of the Valley Air District. So I'm the manager over the team of inspectors that actually goes to the Stockton community area and conducts all of the enforcement work that we do. And so, I work closely with John as the director to, make sure we're implementing all of that. And yeah, looking forward to kicking these meetings back off and being able to share more about what we're doing with all of you. And I'll throw it to John.
Hi, everybody. John Stagnero here. I'm the Director of Compliance at the Air District. It's been a while. Nice to see you again, Debbie. And yeah, looking forward to providing this update for you all and charting a course from here. So thanks, everyone. Go ahead, Nick.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Pierce. I'm a manager in the Permit Services Group in the Modesto office, and my team's in charge of all the air permitting throughout the northern region, which encompasses the Stockton AB 617 community. So,
Nick, are you also in charge of enforcement?
No, that would be Mark Rasmussen and John Stagnero.
Okay.
And I guess I'll hand it back over to Jessica.
Yeah, so what if we now next have some of our community members introduce themselves? So Debbie, as our co-host, I'll have you kick it off.
I just want to welcome, it looks like we have a few people here, and I appreciate you attending today. And hopefully this will be our regular time, and we'll be meeting every other month. And hopefully that'll be enough time to cover all the topics that we want to cover, and maybe go back and review some of the topics that we've had before that were maybe touched on lightly, or we just want to cover more in depth. But it's up to us. And so I need the residents and the participants input, and please speak your mind, and that's what this meeting is all about. And we want to hear it. So thank you.
And we'll go ahead and Hector.
So Hector Olivares, and I am the program manager for Catholic Charities Diocese Stockton for the Environmental Justice Program.
Hi, Hector.
Hello.
All right, and then I see an iPhone on here. Can you unmute yourself? I'm not sure if it's Everett.
It looks like Everett.
It says iPhone Everett Lee up in
One.
Maybe I'll ask to unmute. In the meantime, oops. Is it Alilia?
Aaliyah.
Sorry, I said Alila. Aaliyah. I
It's
apologize.
it's Aaliyah.
Yes.
My name is Aaliyah. I'm with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. I'm working as an intern as a research assistant currently, just sitting in on the meeting. Yep.
Excellent. Well, welcome to our meeting. Definitely happy to have you.
Thank you.
Yes, it is Everett. I'm sorry. I couldn't get
It's
on.
okay,
It wouldn't
Everett.
let me do anything. You're good.
Well, go ahead, Everett, if you want to introduce yourself.
This is Everett Johnson on this beautiful, beautiful day. To see all you guys out here, it's a blessing to be seen and not viewed.
Love it. All right. And then we have a couple folks from CARB, Eric and Kyle.
Yeah, hi, I'm Eric Bissinger. I'm in the enforcement division at CARB. I've been working with I kind of organize or, assist the community to help set up like some diesel enforcement activities in Stockton. And I also do the supplemental environmental projects, which is a funding mechanism. So nice to see everybody.
Hi, Eric.
Hi.
And hey everybody, this is Kyle Goff from CARB. So I'm the sort of like general OCAP liaison or CARB liaison for the Stockton community. This is definitely an area where Eric is the expert and I am the at best layperson. But yeah, I wanted to kind of sit in on the meeting and just get a feel for how the regulatory enforcement subcommittee goes and stuff like that. I'll try not to be a bother.
Oh, goodness.
Glad you're
Never.
here. We're glad you're here.
Happy to have you. It is important to have all the different perspectives, especially someone as important as the liaison to CARB. So we do have two interpreters with us, and I'd love it if you get a chance from Linguistica to introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Jenny Johnson, and I'm an interpreter based out of Washington right now, but representing Linguistica from California. I used to live in Fresno, so I know the Valley well.
Very cool. Welcome. Thank you. And I'm not sure, there's another interpreter? I don't know that I've seen.
There is another interpreter. He might be stepping. Oh,
no worries. Oh, hi, I was just going to have you introduce yourself. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Jade Blackwell. I'm an interpreter as well with Linguistica, and I live in Northern California, Red Bluff.
Okay.
A couple 3 hours above you guys. Yeah. I heard Jenny's voice, and I was like, wait, what do we? Oh, we're we're doing something.
I felt like it was important there. It is such an important piece of what we do is providing equitable access to these meetings. And so I really appreciate you all. A lot of our other meetings, we provide Spanish language interpretation and we look to provide whatever interpretation is needed to get community members involved. And in Stockton, it happens that we do have a pretty active member and potentially more in the future who relies on some of this other ASL interpretation. So thank you so much.
It's impressive. Not many organizations do it. They're required to. The ADA requires everyone to, but there's no teeth to it. But you guys are rocking and rolling. You guys really set a good example.
You guys are amazing role models, I just have to say.
Well,
it's the right thing to do.
What a great feeling to kick us off, and definitely just a shout out to really the community for helping just make sure that we all uplift each other and remind each other of that as well. And definitely Stockton is a great example of that. So well, with that, Rocio, if you can pull up really briefly, and actually maybe I'll just kind of put you on the spot. If you could actually pull up the website where folks can find like the other tab that you have open, that's just the regular for. Yes, perfect. Maybe walk us through, if you can, just that like what's on this page, and then we can open the agenda and walk through it as well.
Yeah, of course. So I'll actually take it one step back further and show everyone where the Stockton subcommittees page is. So right here, as you can see, we have a list of like all the Stockton subcommittees that we have, and then we try to do our best to like update when we have the next meetings. So for example, for the regulatory enforcement that we're in right now, you can see the next meeting is today. So you can go ahead and click on like any one that you're interested in. So for the sake of this meeting, I'll just click on ours. And then right here, we have a list of like all the previous meetings from the past. As you can see, the meetings are recorded, so we'll make sure to post these after the meeting's over. So that way for folks that can't make the meeting, they can always go back and watch these. We also post like any meeting information that we have. So for today, we have the agenda that's posted, which I'll go over right now in 1 sec. And we also have presentations or like any other meeting materials that we'll add here as well.
And Rocio, I want to add that there was a handout that we had at this, I believe it was the second meeting. It might have been the first meeting, but it was basically some of the regulations that we were going to look at. The verbiage. Remember that, Jessica?
I do. Yeah, let me go ahead and maybe I can just drop in the chat maybe some of the older materials we've reviewed, and that can help set the stage as well. That's a good idea.
That would be great. That I think is important for everybody to have.
Great. Awesome.
Great point, Debbie. With that, I can do a quick run through the agenda so folks know where we're at. So starting at 4 o'clock, we had our welcome and introductions. Following this, we're going to have the strategic planning portion of the meeting, where we'll review all the progress that has been done up to date for this subcommittee, and then also coordinate on like future topics that folks are interested in having for future subcommittee meetings. And then after this planning, we'll have our team also review the quarterly enforcement report. And then we have the last 10 minutes dedicated for any next steps or feedback that folks want to add on.
Awesome. Well, thanks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in. For those of you, like Debbie just reminded us, we did meet several times last year and the year, but kind of end of 2022 leading into 2023. And had a lot of topics. We covered all the topics we had sort of scheduled for ourselves. And at the time weren't really, with a lot of other things kind of going on in implementation, didn't really have another set of topics that folks were interested in diving into. We ended up covering, some topics during the main part of the regular CSC meetings. That said, we definitely know that there's an interest and we're so eager to get back into it. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today strategically planning for, and can everyone see my screen? There's like a Jamboard up with some stickies. Awesome. So this might look really familiar. What we've done, as Rocio just walked you all through, is you can tell that we've actually, with the addition of some strategic planning and some overall discussions, 4 of our main meetings last year, or our subcommittee meetings rather last year, we dove into 4 sort of like high-hitting topics that you were all really interested in diving into. And then there were a handful that were sort of remaining, not to say we can't attack some of the older topics like Debbie mentioned earlier, but there were a handful of sort of remaining upcoming topics that we wanted to make sure that we could schedule. So I'm going to walk through a couple of different kind of questions that I have for you today. And the first really is, well, maybe I'll just kind of orient you to this slide. The first, there's 2 tables here. This first table is a list of the top NOx emission sources. So that's a precursor to both summertime pollution like ozone and PM 2.5 that's formed in the atmosphere. The top emission sources are listed here. These aren't all the emission sources. These are just the top handful of emission sources. The little X just marks that we, in some capacity, talked about these at a past meeting. And then these are the direct PM 2.5 emission sources. Certainly, let fewer tons per year, but it's also a different type of pollutant where PM 2.5, compared to NOx by itself, depending on the type of PM 2.5 can be really harmful. And so it's important to kind of balance these 2 as well. But just taking those in, the team created a list with you all during a meeting a year and a half or so ago, where we tackled these 4 topics, and then we had a few upcoming topics that we wanted to talk about. So we wanted to come today, maybe Debbie, I can pass it over to you to talk about sort of the proposal of working with you all on essentially dragging these over to schedule future topics. And the reason it's important not only to schedule future topics to help you all sort of understand and plan your questions and maybe plan sort of the way that you prepare for coming to these meetings, is that anything that says on or off road is something that's CARB's sort of regulatory and enforcement purview. So it requires a little bit more of that like coordination. It requires, you know, it might not even fall under Eric or Kyle's purview. It might be someone completely separate at a completely different department at CARB. And so we want to make sure we could schedule these well in advance and make sure we get some of the questions you have, maybe even today, that we can give to those folks to help come to these meetings and talk a little bit about them. So maybe before we go into planning for the future, does anyone have any questions or want to talk a little bit about what we've already covered? Not necessarily questions like, let's dig into those presentations, but just any clarification for what any of the past topics were or any other sort of concern.
I think that one of my biggest concerns is, and it might not have to do with every one of them, but when you go into senior citizens and people on low income, especially that live in the area, that you have to purchase something in order to get something, or before you could buy it and then get the voucher and all that. I think there's I think we should discuss some ways to better deal with that. I mean, I know that there's a guideline far as finances are concerned and stuff like that, but still, I think that if it's for the community, then, and we know that the times are hard and things are struggling right now, it's just hard to make it, period. So that's just my biggest concern right there.
I hear you there. I would think I'm flagging that, and I'm gonna write that down as a note. That feels so when we're talking about folks buying things ahead of time, I'm hearing a little bit more, especially when I think of senior citizens, I think of folks that are maybe more residents. I'm thinking you're thinking a little bit more of like some of the incentives that we provide. We're asking folks to buy things and then reimburse them. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Yeah,
you're absolutely right, because I cannot see what I have tried to pinch it out, but I still can't see it yet. So I'm good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and maybe I'll zoom in. We're talking, this committee is a little bit more focused on actually the things that aren't incentives. So the things that are rules and regulations targeting, you know, certainly there are residential related rules and regulations, but a lot of what we're talking about are rules and regulations.
Very good. That's good.
Awesome. Rules and regulations that hit at more like industrial sources or mobile sources that are a little bit larger. So not necessarily hitting at anyone that's like a particular singular resident, but rather maybe hitting at industry that drive trucks in the area, hitting at trains or rail car movers. Those are the types of things that this committee is going to talk probably a little bit more about, but certainly that's something good to keep in mind, that we have equity in our incentives program. So thanks for that reminder.
I would just like to say that one thing that if you could go down, we didn't discuss on-road mobile heavy-duty trucks, which if you go back up, to the NOx emissions, it's the top NOx emissions tons per year.
Yeah.
And we didn't delve into it.
Oops, sorry.
It was lightly touched on.
Yeah.
So that's something that we can always add. And I'd like us to tackle the top three right off the bat. The trains, maybe the ocean going vessels also, since we just had the port.
Yeah.
And
that might be a good one, but that's just some of my suggestions, and tell me everybody what you think.
Yeah, maybe I'll put them up here just so everyone knows these are like suggestions for now. And just to reiterate what Debbie was mentioning, we do have it on here. It was a past topic, but to Debbie's point, we did have one presentation. It was a great update from Eric's team on a little bit of some community-driven enforcement activities, but it really wasn't a comprehensive update on like what regulations or rules or other types of enforcement regarding heavy duty trucks. So that's a good reminder that that can be, especially given that it's sort of the highest piece here.
And our goal with these meetings, I just want to put this in your head now, because we're going to talk about it again at the end, but we're asking CARB and the Air District, what can we do about these issues?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing we want to ask ourselves, and this is the residents and everybody would be saying, what do we want to do? What kind of changes, if any, we could lessen them or increase them if the agencies say we can do that, you know, we can always do that. So that's what each of these meetings, that when we have one of these topics, that's what we're going to focus on.
And I'm even going to put that. That's such a great reminder. The discussions at these meetings.
What we can do, and then what we want to do. What we can change and what we want to change.
And what needs to be done.
Exactly. What we feel needs to be done. So, anybody else have any comments on the three that I suggested to talk? Well, it's the trains kind of includes the vehicles, and the ocean vessels are a little bit farther down, but they're just as important. And
I think just a good reminder, right, too. I think that port tour was really eye-opening for some folks on all the different types of equipment, what that was out there. And so, yeah, maybe I can just, we put at the time, we can change this right now, off-road, we kind of combined the two. That's off-road equipment like trains, and then off-road equipment like things that are used to move, like yard haul or like big pieces of equipment that are maybe used at a particular site to move pallets around or move, you know, unload trucks, can be those types of off-road equipment. Forklifts are off-road equipment. So that's why they're listed together. But although maybe we reach out to CARB, I will just say too, and feel free, CARB folks, let us know. Maybe when in looking at this, the CARB folks are like, whoa, those are two totally different people. And so maybe that's something maybe we do separate out. And we don't have to do it this moment. We can definitely take this, work with our CARB colleagues as we plan some of these meetings and see kind of how maybe best to break out or break down some of these discussions.
Yeah, I would say that we probably have experts in each one of those. That would probably be better to keep them separate, or, you know, if you want to tackle two in one meeting, or
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is totally, I think that could also be possible. And then maybe if we get to the meeting and it turns out we're really invested in one, we can just always, you know, bump the other if need be. But, you know, maybe that's the approach as well. I see Margot joined us. Hi, Margot.
Hi, Al. I apologize for being late.
it's okay.
No worries. I think maybe we can just reiterate, and then Debbie, maybe you can reiterate kind of your suggestion. We just reviewed, sorry, maybe if this is, I don't know how long you've been on, but just really briefly, we reviewed the top sources of emissions, which was sort of the basis for this committee a year and a half ago when we were established. We reviewed briefly that what we've already talked about. We mentioned that there were several upcoming topics, and three of them were in these stickies down here. Debbie did a nice little reminder that at these future meetings, I think as a co-host, she's going to help us sort of frame each topic, not only to just be an update from us as an air district, or in these cases, mostly from CARB, but also just sort of like understand the universe of what's allowed to sort of happen regarding enforcement of these measures. And then also maybe any input that the community has, or just questions they might have on like how to implement or change or make better any of the enforcement that's happening, or you know, whatever opportunities there are for more input. And so Debbie, maybe if you can walk through briefly your thought process on your suggestion for these being the next three topics.
Because they're kind of the top NOx contributors. I thought maybe mobile heavy duty trucks. We kind of had a light discussion on it about a program that CARB had with I believe it was with children, and having them kind of open their eyes to the issue, which was great. But maybe we need to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit. And then off-road trains and transport vehicles, and off-road, the ocean going vessels, since we were just at the port. And we could put these in any order that you like, but this is just, we just put these, since our meetings are every other month, on the third Thursday of the month, that we put the first top five, or top three, excuse me, and then in that order. But if we want to rearrange them, we can. If there's a different suggestion, we can. We'll have quarterly enforcement reports when they're available.
Yep. So yeah, I guess maybe just the question to the group is that if does this feel like a good next step, next 3 steps? We can iterate each meeting if that makes, you know, it easier to move forward. But do these feel like some good topics that folks are interested in? In addition, and you'll see it here happen right now, so maybe if this feels good, we can transition to Mark. In addition, the district will always, to Debbie's point, every quarter have an update on all of every single, no matter the topic, every single enforcement action will be available for us to review.
Right.
This is Everett, and I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we should go for it.
Awesome.
And Margot, we're gonna add 15 minutes at the end, 10 or 15 minutes, to ask the agencies, what can we change? If there's something we feel that needs to be changed in the regulations to better them in our area. And what we want to change. After we find out what we can change, what we actually want to change. So those 2 questions will be asked at the end of every single meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion, Debbie. I think that's great to like sort of also kind of have similar structure to every meeting. I think is really nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm not hearing major objections, so I think for now, we will call this good. We will, on our end, obviously we have CARB folks here, but we'll also continue to move forward, work with the CARB team on setting up these discussions for those meetings. As Debbie mentioned, they will be in June, August, October, so every other month on the third Thursday at this exact time. So I just also appreciate those of you that were helping advocate for just a more standard frequency and timing of this. So I think that really helps us plan and make sure folks are available as well. Awesome. I am going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pass it to Mark to go over the quarterly enforcement report.
All right. Thanks, Jess. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay. Are you all seeing the enforcement report? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. I want to share it with you all. This report. So we generate this on a quarterly basis, and it's posted on the website under the documents tab. And it just kind of highlights at a high level the enforcement efforts we do in the community, and as well as the specific measures in the SERP that we do, and the work we've done to meet those commitments. So this report is covering our activities from January 1st through the end of March. The first topic, we do have some additional fugitive dust commitments and efforts that we make in regards to the SERP. The district has the Regulation 8 series of rules, which are all put in place to control dust and emissions, primarily from construction sites, but also from other activities that possibly may generate dust. And so it's primarily concerned during the second and third quarters of the year. So we do additional targeted enforcement efforts in the community during those quarters. And as you'd expect during the more wet part of the year, we didn't receive any fugitive dust complaints during this quarter within the boundaries of the community. The next topic is anti-idling diesel enforcement. So we do a targeted enforcement effort within the Stockton community on a quarterly basis, just to try to identify any idling diesel trucks that are parked within the boundaries of the community. And so during our enforcement effort this quarter, we did identify one truck idling in violation of CARB's regulation. And so we took enforcement action for that one. And we did not receive any public complaints regarding idling diesel trucks during this quarter.
Can I ask, this is Margot, can I ask how you go around with the enforcement? How do you find an offender? And is it mainly on streets, or do you actually monitor businesses?
So we primarily, we'll drive around the community in areas where we know trucks tend to park and idle. So we'll hit a couple of the gas or the stations where they can get diesel and they're likely to be idling. We'll go along Fresno Street, by the school. They tend to idle along that corridor there. And so we'll just kind of, we'll drive around the community ourselves and just kind of look for trucks that are parked and pull over, see if they're operating, and we got a timer to see if they're exceeding the idle limit. So we just kind of send a team through the community, and in the hot spots we know the trucks tend to hang out in.
What is the idle limit, Mark?
It's generally 5 minutes if they're idling in excess of 5 minutes.
That's a long time.
There's some some stipulations depending on if they've got that clean idle sticker or not, but yeah, if they don't. Go ahead, Hector.
How often do you do this?
So we do this at least once a quarter.
Thank you.
Yeah. And this is just district enforcement. CARB's also conducting their own idling diesel enforcement efforts, and so it's all working together. So as far as stationary source inspections, we conduct regular inspections at all of the permitted facilities within the boundaries of the community. But we do also do increased inspections at facilities which have received a recent emissions violation. And so during this quarter, we did a total of 44 stationary source inspections within the boundaries of the community. 37 of those were initial compliance inspections. 3 of those were follow-up inspections to verify that a facility had returned to compliance after we documented an issue. And then we also had 4 what we call source test observations, which is where a permitted facility was having a third-party contractor come on site to conduct an emissions test. And our staff went and witnessed that test to make sure it was conducted according to the proper methods. As far as enforcement actions during this quarter, for stationary sources, we issued a total of 8 violation notices, 5 of which were procedural or administrative in nature, and 3 of which were emissions related. And then as mentioned above, anywhere where we find an emissions related violation, their inspection frequency is reduced and we head there more often. And so those 3 facilities are now on more frequent inspection rotations. And then as far as non-stationary sources, we documented 3 violations within the community. During this quarter, we responded to a total of 5 public complaints within the community boundaries, 3 of which were regarding open burns, 1 was regarding odors, and 1 was of a other nature. And then as always, we like to include on here where people can submit complaints. We always promptly respond. We're happy to get them. It helps us identify issues promptly as they're occurring in the community. And so we encourage everybody to spread that contact information around. And so this is kind of the high level report, but I do want to point out one thing that we've added recently on this next page here. And I apologize if it's a little hard to see. Let me zoom in just a tiny bit. That's too far. Okay. So this is actually a summary of those 11 violations that were issued within the community during this past quarter. And so this is also posted on the website together with that cover page for all of you to reference if you want to kind of dive a little deeper into exactly what violations were observed. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
I do. Once you get a complaint, how fast do you guys respond to it?
As quickly as possible, usually immediately. So, when the complaint comes in, we assign it to the closest inspector, and then they kind of drop everything and respond. The complaint responses are our top priority. And
can you give me a little average about how long it would take for them to be on site?
I mean, so it varies during the workday. It's generally we have somebody working up in the northern part of the valley, so they're able to be there, 30, 40 minutes, depending on where exactly they're currently located. But generally, whenever there's a complaint that comes in, the closest person just wraps up what they're doing and heads over there. And then we do have staff working, on weekends as well, so that there's no gap in enforcement coverage.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Margot again. I apologize. So I must say I did call in a complaint once. This is like 2 years ago, and they were there within 30 minutes, I think, because they happened to be in the area, and it was pretty impressive. So your very first one up there is a residence using a wood burning fireplace. And do you have what the result was? Are your enforcement people aware of the extra monies AB 617 our group has for transitioning to out the wood burning stoves and fireplaces?
Yes, and that's part of our outreach through the settlement process for the violation, is making them aware of options they have if they wanted to swap that out.
Great, thank you.
Good question, Margo. Good. So I'm just wondering how often I see New Star terminals had organic liquid throughput, I guess, that comes in and then they put it out, exceed 24 million gallons in any one calendar year. How often does something like that happen?
It varies. New Star specifically has not had, so that's known as a throughput exceedance. So essentially, they applied for permits to store organic liquid materials, primarily, gasoline or other petroleum products. And each tank has a specific limit of how much material they can pump in and out of it throughout the year.
Yeah.
And
Those are those big tanks out there at the port, correct?
correct. Yeah. And so, generally the facilities are very aware of their throughput limits, and, they applied for those limits when they initially got their permits issued to them. And so, for New Star specifically, we haven't had throughput exceedances in the recent past. But in this case, we did document that they did go over that limit that's on their permit. And so that's why the violation was issued. And that does count as an emissions violation, because due to the extra throughput, there's extra potential for emissions during that transfer process. And so they're now on a expedited or more frequent inspection frequency as a result of that.
Okay. And Synergy looks like they have a problem.
So Synergy, that's actually a gasoline dispensing, like just a regular gas station.
Right.
And so what happened was that they came in, they bought a couple of gas stations in the Stockton community, and they failed to notify us that they took over the stations. And so we wrote them, those are actually NTCs. That's a notice to comply, which is, operating without a valid permit to operate, because they did not submit a transfer of ownership application to us. And so what happens in that case is that the permit's issued to the wrong legal entity, which is, it's not good. So yeah, they need to get that corrected. And so we wrote a notice to comply for each of the stations that they had bought within the community boundaries.
And I see in Mesa Trucking idling within 100 feet of a school. That's been kind of a huge point for us right from the start. And this was just last month. So is there something more than just a notice of violation they get? Do they get a fine? I mean.
Yeah, great question. So anything where you see a type NOV, that's notice of violation. Notices of violations are always accompanied by a fine or a financial penalty. Right. And so, that's due to the nature of the violation, or the fact if it's an emissions violation, there's a penalty for the excess emissions. But yes, you're correct. There is a financial penalty for the violations that are issued.
And since we're going to be discussing that soon, how much was that violation fine?
Well, so that's one thing, this is all kind of very current and in real time. Most of these violations have not yet been closed or settled at this time. And so it's too early in that process to say what the ultimate
And they can use credits, is that right? They can use some kind of credits to offset their fine?
No, not to offset fines.
Okay.
No.
That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to confirm everything, maybe I'll just ask the same way again, because I want to make sure you're probably not the only one with that same question, Debbie. I think there's some folks that have similar types of questions. This, like you are issued a notice of violation, that is an enforcement action. That's like getting a speeding ticket, right? And then when you get a speeding ticket, there are opportunities to go and explain yourself, and there's maybe a process sometimes. That happens similarly here, and that's what Mark means by like settling or closing out the case. That's why we don't have an official dollar amount, but it doesn't there's no other way to, we figure out, okay, maybe there was this other way that it happened, and maybe it changes a little bit of the enforcement action, but there's no like, oh, we have this credit, we were so good before. It doesn't matter. You emission violate, you get the fine, and you get the ticket.
Good.
Yeah, well said, Jess. Thank you for clarifying there. Yeah, and then the other option, the other category on here, the NTC. So those are what's called a notice to comply, and that is, it's still a formal enforcement action, but it is more of a written warning with a deadline. And so in this case, Synergy was written, these two NTCs, those had a very strict deadline of, you failed to submit this transfer of ownership application. That's very procedural and administrative in nature. It's not necessarily any emissions have happened. So as long as they submit the proper paperwork and the proper timeline, it will not get escalated to a notice of violation with a fine. But if they fail to submit that paperwork, then it would result in a notice of violation, which would also have a fine associated with it. So hopefully that helps clarify. But if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And like you said, you do one per quarter. looking for a diesel idling somewhere by a school or in an area that might be prone to have diesel.
So
truck.
often we'll cover, you know, multiple parts of the community during that surveillance effort, not just drive to one part of the community and then call that finished. We usually would drive around to a couple different locations. Yeah, but our SERP commitment is one targeted enforcement effort. That's where we send staff just for the purpose of looking for idling diesel trucks. But the rest of the time that we're in the community, we are keeping an eye open for those things too.
For all kinds.
And we're in the community, you know, for other inspections or other reasons, other complaint investigations. And so it's not that that's the only time we're ever looking for idling diesels. It's just we have that's a trip where it's only for that purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And as I mentioned, this is up on the you know, it'll be posted to the community documents page, and so you're all welcome to take a look at it. And you know, if you ever have any questions on it, you can reach out to us or bring it up at these regulatory meetings. But I think I'll throw it back to Jess.
Great. Thanks,
Well,
Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Well, actually, I know, Debbie, we already talked about it. We were planning to reserve the next 10 minutes. We already, normally for next steps, we would plan our next agenda. We just planned our next 3 agendas. We were also planning to tee up your point about posing those 2 questions regularly, which we've also already talked about. So maybe I'll just mention right here, and you know, there's nothing wrong with ending a call early, of course, is that I think we now have a pretty good flow, right, for what we want the meetings to be. We probably won't take as much time to introduce every single person, maybe depending on timing and making sure we squeeze in everything. But we'll certainly introduce any new folks that come onto the call, especially if it's agency folks that we don't normally see, which I imagine might be the case for the next few. Then we'll have, if it makes sense, if it's been a whole quarter, we'll have Mark or someone from his team present the quarterly enforcement report, do what he just did, where we kind of go through and talk about it. I thought that was a really great overview, Mark. Thank you. And then we'll have the discussion questions at the end. So if that works for you all, that's kind of the flow we want for June, August, October.
Sounds wonderful to me. Anybody else?
Sounds
Yeah, I
good.
like to hear that. I like hearing the reports.
That's what we want to hear. Good.
Well, then I'll just let you know what internally our next step is. We are going to work with CARB on getting, you know, prepping for all of these so that they're nice and robust. We will also work with the co-leads. I'm bummed that she's not here, but Gloria is also a co-host with us along with Debbie. We will work with those folks, and anyone else who's interested, let me know on prepping for these meetings. So we'll we'll be the conveners of the CARB folks and the co-leads. Just as we get a presentation set together, you all can give us feedback. Debbie and Gloria can give us feedback on the presentations to see, do they make sense? Are they community friendly? And then, you know, we can kind of have that iterative process before it even comes to the subcommittee. So be on the lookout for that. And then be on the lookout for, we'll post the notes that I just took. I'll have Rocio post them on the website.
Sounds good.
Since it came up on one of the violations, the 100 feet from a school, and I'm assuming that was Washington School. I wonder if we can talk about that a little more in depth next, just a little bit more in depth that next time. Like, is there sufficient signage? Do the truckers know? They must know by now. But it's kind of shocking to me to see that just last month.
I just added that note because on-road mobile trucks is our next meeting. I think that's a great concept. Maybe while I'm here, we have 7 minutes. Are there any other folks or any other thoughts on on-road mobile trucks? Sorry, Debbie, I interrupted you. Maybe that we can solicit.
No, I was just going to say, is that a small trucking company? I see Mesa, a personal man's name, and then trucking LLC. Usually they just have like a couple of trucks. type of thing. Do you know that, Mark? If that's a
I don't happen to know their company size offhand. I apologize. But yeah, Mesa Trucking LLC. I know they're incorporated, but I'm not sure. I know that the driver was not the owner of the company, so it's
yeah, okay.
a decent size, I'm sure.
And is this sign in is it in English and in Spanish? Is there one in both?
Which sign are you referring to?
Is there a sign that thought I heard Margot refer to a sign, no idling of trucks within 100 feet of the school?
Maybe Eric. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Eric.
Well, I don't think there's a sign for that, but they're not supposed to be.
Eric is a perfect person, I think, to answer some of these questions. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Eric.
like about a year ago, we did a pretty extensive kind of enforcement activity by that Washington elementary. Yeah. And we gave the city a bunch of no idling signs, and then we followed back up and they were installed, but a lot of times they get removed. So I haven't been back to look at them in a while. But yeah, they're up there. They're across the street. They tend to line up right there, and there's a burrito place, a lunch spot right there that they tend to, and they'll leave the truck running while they run in and get, have lunch. So, and the ones that we gave them, they're not the ones that are in Spanish. So if that don't answer your question, but they put up about 4 or 5 of them along that stretch right there.
And I do believe there are Spanish ones though that CARB does have, because I think in Fresno we put up some Spanish ones, if I'm not, or you gave folks maybe I'm mistaken there, but
yeah, I think we can make those available. Yeah, but I'm not sure if they're the ones that have like the exact like code on it and stuff like that.
Right,
It might just say, "Hey, children are breathing here."
yeah.
That type.
Yeah.
I do remember that, Eric, talking about the signs, and I just made a note on our notes here for the June meeting, not only to have, the team, idling is one piece of the heavy duty trucks component. There's also other parts of the heavy duty truck rule that help make them cleaner. So maybe we have a couple of different facets to it, but I do wonder if one of those is also making, of course the city is involved in all of our work, but inviting specifically someone from the city to talk about maybe what Eric just mentioned about the signs.
Yeah, and another thing to point out, but the schools is that there's the 5-minute rule doesn't apply. You're supposed to turn it off.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Good point. Awesome. Well, definitely a lot of good pre-conversation to help us set that up. If anything else occurs to anyone else leading into that, please let us know or reach out to Debbie as the co-host, and she can help facilitate that discussion with us. Other than that, I hope everyone has a really great evening.
Okay.
Yes. Thank
Good
you,
night,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, talk
Great
later.
job, Debbie. Thank you.
Sounds good.